Hi guys, this is B Chow and welcome back to my channel. Now as you can see today with me I have the Mercedes-Benz EQC, which is the brand's first luxury electric car in India. And before I get started talking about more about this car, its features and its details, I want to go over a little bit about where the whole EV scene is currently, not just in India but internationally, and how this car sort of fits into the bill. Now the thing that most of us don't realize is that EVs are currently in their transition phase like any other technology when it is new. What I mean is that most of the cars that are out there are sort of built on their existing traditional platforms, combustion engine platforms, where the combustion engine and its components have been taken out and been replaced by battery packs and motors. And what that does is sort of makes the EV in its transition phase, where it is not exactly a completely full-blown EV, because it is sort of midway between a combustion engine car as well as an electric vehicle, where neither do most of the cars have the desired range that you're looking for, and also along with that we don't even have the charging infrastructure to make sure that the car does long distance journeys every time whenever you wish to. And purely because of that, you cannot rely on an EV as your only mode of transport, and you will always have to kind of substitute it with a internal combustion powered car, which is a petrol or a diesel car, which will sort of help you or enable you to travel longer distances. But where these EVs have their strong points is best for intra-city travel, in for example cases like ours, where we can easily think of doing like Bombay Pune on a fairly regular basis in these cars. And the best part where these cars can be utilized is within your city. And in those kind of scenarios, these cars, the EVs, are absolutely brilliant, because not only will they do their job in a very economical way, it will also do that in an environmental friendly way and as well in a very comfortable and convenient way. And that's exactly where the Mercedes-Benz EQC shines exceptionally well, because this car takes the best bits of being an electric vehicle, which is its comfort, its smoothness and its economy, and it sort of combines it with the best things that Mercedes offers, that is performance, build quality, safety, as well as comfort. Now in terms of design with the EQC, there's a lot going on here. Now you might argue that it might look a little different from the outside with its big plastic grille and large swooping headlights, but then you see these days most of the car manufacturers, including BMW and other companies, are doing really weird things with their cars' exteriors to make them look different and sort of differentiate their cars with the rest of the cars out there. So in that regards, even Mercedes is doing something which is a little bit out of the ordinary and might feel a little weird. So the best way to describe the EQC is it's sort of a redesigned GLC SUV, where the internal combustion bits have been thrown out and replaced by electrification, where you have now got like a 80 kilowatt hour battery pack underneath the floor of this car, and there are two motors, one on each axle of this car. And that battery pack also has brought along some concerns along with it as well, but those are things which we are going to discuss a little later. For now, what I want to tell you is that the EQC is actually a good 30 lakhs expensive than the GLC SUV, and that is kind of expected with any new technology which is sort of in the transitioning phase. Things are always very expensive when they are new, but there are a few advantages, believe it or not. There are a few advantages of having a EQC right now. First of which is, this is going to be quite an exclusive car, where not a lot of people are actually going to have this car. So whoever is the owner of an EQC in today's day is going to find himself one of the very few people to have that novelty of having a very unique and a very tech heavy car all for themselves in a lot of people. And the second advantage is that since Mercedes wanted to sort of justify the price and sweeten the deal for EQC buyers, they've actually thrown in a lot of tech over here inside this car, which takes it way above a GLC SUV. Like if you compare the MBUX in this car compared to the GLC, it's got a much larger twin display screen, which is more similar to the S-Class than it is to the GLC. Then it also has the heads-up display, it also has the automatic lane keep assist, it also has adaptive cruise control, and it also has your automatic emergency braking. So in that way, Mercedes has actually outfitted the EQC with a lot more features. And if you see over here on the interior of the car also, it's been completely redesigned in a lot of ways, where you now have these flute styled air vents which look completely different and very unique. It also has this slash door design which looks like Wolverine accidentally slipped onto the door while he was exiting and left these marks on over here. Although that said, when the ambient lights are on, these do look really good, the way the light bounces off on them. And overall, the interior somehow feels a lot more upmarket than the GLC. And that also includes the fact that this car actually has a much higher end Burmeister sound system compared to the EQC's regular Mercedes-Benz audio. And overall, even the fit and finish of everything, including the dashboard and the seats, sort of do feel upmarket compared to the GLC. So Mercedes is actually offering you a lot over here. Now, as you can see, this is the 1886 trim level, which was launched to celebrate Mercedes's 135 years of making cars from when they first introduced a car in 1886. And it sort of also marks as a very important change in the company's overall history and the direction where they are going, as this being a standpoint from where they sort of leave behind their traditional ways and sort of push towards electrification. But the main party piece of this car is its electric powertrain, and what Mercedes has done over here is given it two motors where one powers the front axle and one powers the rear axle, and combined both these motors produce about 408 horsepower, which is pretty much a lot for a car this size. And most of the time this car actually runs on front wheel drive mode, when only the four-wheel drive mode is activated either if you're in sport mode or when the car thinks that it requires traction on all four wheels. But otherwise, it runs on a more efficient front engine, front motor drive mode for most of the times. Now, Mercedes claims that the 80 kilowatt hour battery pack that they've put underneath this car is good enough for a range of about 370 to 420 kilometers of range. But realistically, I would say the maximum range you can expect out of this car is about 320 to about 340 kilometers per hour, provided that you turn off the AC and all other auxiliaries that consume power. But since we are in India and most of the times we require our air conditioning for most of the seasons, maybe apart from a little bit of the winters in some parts of the country, the air conditioning is going to be on most of the times, and that means that you would be reducing your overall range to approximately about 250 to 270 kilometers per hour, which is still not terrible, which is still quite a respectable range where you can easily travel around town for multiple days. And even if you have to make a long distance journey, you can easily, like for example, Bombay to Pune can be done on a single charge. When you come to Pune, probably you can charge it and then go back to Bombay as well. So it's something that can be done. And in that kind of a way, the range is still quite respectable and quite decent, especially if you are going to be hanging around town and traveling here and there nearby. And traveling around town is exactly where this car is actually the most fun at as well, because that is where you can utilize the one thing which is awesome about EVs, and that is its acceleration. Now, the dual motors that this car gets can accelerate this car at a blistering 5.1 seconds, which is actually quite fast for the car this size and this weight. And just to give you a comparison, that is actually faster than a 2013 Porsche Boxster S. It is even faster than a 2014 Mustang GT, the proper full-fat V8. Like, every time you put your foot down, the car just jumps on you. I mean, like, check this out. It's a weird feeling inside. It just picks up and scoots. I'm serious that despite the size of this car, that acceleration is never going to get old. You're never going to get feeling of boredom from that acceleration. Like anywhere, if you just stopped on a red light and you stomp your foot down and 100. It is absolutely mad how fast this car picks up pace. I mean, people, I am pretty sure that when you overtake people with this car, they won't know what's coming left, right and center, and how the hell did such a big chunk of mass overtake them so silently. It is astounding the way this thing can pick up and go. Ooh, it's very addictive. Let's do that again. Empty piece of road, stop, floor it. 90. Damn, this car is insane when it comes to acceleration. And that is actually one of the best parts about EVs, that till the time you have charge in your car, you can pretty much just constantly keep doing these things, and it just never fails to surprise you. It never fails to entertain you. This thing is great. EVs are awesome when it comes to acceleration. I mean, people can argue that it's like a one-trick pony kind of a situation where the only good thing most of the EVs have is their acceleration. But man, in the city where most of the times you're not doing speeds above, let's say 60 or 70, you're not going to be too aggressive in cornering or too aggressive with your speed. So the only thing that you can utilize, and you can utilize again and again, is that quick acceleration while you're exiting traffic lights. There's one thing that this car kind of leaves you a little wanting for, is the brakes. Now, this is the time when we have to talk about those two consequences of electrification with this car that we were discussing earlier. One of them is that the size of that battery pack which is fitted underneath this car is that it's given this car a chunky amount of weight. Like, this car is a proper chungus. Close to 2.5 tons is what this car actually weighs, and that affects severely in the way this car brakes and stops. It is not easy to stop this car. The brakes don't feel sufficient enough. They feel like you definitely need bigger rotors, you definitely need more braking power. And the second problem because of that battery pack is that the battery pack which sits below the floor of this car has actually eaten up most of the ground clearance in this car. And what that means is that when you are driving around town and when you're going over speed breakers, you gotta be half of the time keeping your eyes closed like this. It's gonna most probably scrape most of the places. Like, lot of speed breakers, I had actually had to put the car diagonally over it so that it doesn't scrape, and go like really slowly crawl over them just to make sure that I don't touch the underbelly of the car most of the places. And if you're planning to take this car off-road, well, then forget about it, because it is definitely going to scrape multiple places multiple times, and it sort of hurts every time it scrapes, because that is the one reason you buy an SUV for, no? Good ground clearance. And it's just weird that that's the one thing you don't get with the EQC. And also, the EQC doesn't feel very nice when cornering, because for some reason the battery pack that is there in the EQC doesn't kind of reduce the center of gravity of the car, and most of the times you can feel the entire weight of the car when you're taking it into corners. You can feel its heft, you can feel the body roll, and overall it's just not a much enjoyable experience. But if you're driving this car normally like a normal person around town, the experience completely changes, because it suddenly transforms into a very comfortable, a very quiet, and a very, very polished experience. Since it doesn't have an engine, and being a Mercedes-Benz, there are hardly any squeaks and rattles in this car. It's a very serene and a very sterile experience where you actually feel completely secluded from what's going on around you, no matter what part of the city you are, and no matter how many honks or how many people yelling and screaming around you. So in the end, I think the best way to use the EQC is how every other EV likes to be used, which is driven very normally and gently around town. And the EQC is kind of excellent in executing that, where it is absolutely comforting and calm to sit in for your day-to-day driving. And when it comes to overtaking, this thing is just like a silent missile. And I know that the pricing might not be everyone's cup of tea, but well, that is something you have to pay for any technology that's shiny and new. I hope you liked this video, and I hope to see you back in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and ciao.